The massive crystal halls of the Galactic Council Station hummed with quiet energy as representatives from 47 different species gathered for what would become the most important meeting in galactic history. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vorthic Empire stood at his speaking podium, his scaled green skin catching the artificial light as he addressed the assembled crowd. His yellow eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked toward the empty seats that should have held the human delegation. For 32 years, those seats had been occupied by Captain Jake Morrison and his aide Lieutenant Lisa Harper. Morrison was known throughout the galaxy as the human who could solve impossible problems with ideas that made no sense to anyone else. Harper always carried thick data tablets filled with human research that somehow made their crazy plans work. Together, they had stopped 3 major wars and helped enemy species become friends. The Krex and the Yillian had been fighting for 200 years until Morrison suggested they compete in trade instead of battle. The Etherians and the Void Hunters had nearly destroyed each other until Harper showed them how their different abilities could help explore dangerous space regions together. But today, for the first time in decades, the human seats were empty. Council Speaker Veltara raised her crystalline form from the central platform. She was older than most civilizations, her translucent body holding the wisdom of 3 centuries spent keeping peace between the galaxy's many peoples. Her voice carried the weight of authority as she called the emergency session to order. The chamber fell silent except for the soft clicking of translator devices and the rustle of various alien forms settling into their positions. 3 weeks ago, something unprecedented had happened. Every human communication across known space had simply stopped. No distress signals, no diplomatic messages, no trade requests, no casual conversations between human colonies and other worlds. It was as if 43 human worlds had all decided to go to sleep at exactly the same moment. Ships sent to investigate returned with reports that chilled even the bravest space captains. The human colonies were there, but empty. Buildings stood intact. Power systems ran normally. Defense satellites orbited in perfect formation, but not a single human could be found anywhere. The various species reacted differently to this news. The warlike Krex delegation celebrated openly, believing that humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy had finally been stopped by some unknown force. Their leader, War Chief Thoktar, had always argued that humans were too unpredictable and dangerous to be allowed such freedom in space. The Yillian Consortium worried about lost profits, as human traders had become essential to many of their business operations. The philosophical Etherians wondered if humanity had somehow transcended physical existence and moved to a higher plane of reality. Only one human remained in contact with the outside galaxy. Admiral Rex Coleman commanded the human defense fleet stationed at the edge of council space, far from the main human colonies. His messages had become increasingly strange over the past weeks. Instead of demanding search parties or expressing concern for his missing people, Coleman sent short, cryptic communications that worried the council more than silence would have. His last message had been particularly disturbing. The quiet ones are coming home. Recommend all species maintain current positions and avoid human territory. What did he mean by quiet ones? Humans were never quiet. They were the species that asked too many questions, explored dangerous places that others avoided, and insisted on trying new things that had never been tested. They were the ones who had turned a failed peace negotiation into a successful trade agreement by suggesting all sides compete in a cooking contest. They were the people who had solved the Kepler mining crisis by teaching the native creatures to help with excavation instead of fighting against it. Zethkar began his speech with obvious pleasure in his voice. He had never liked humanity's influence in galactic affairs. The Vorthic Empire preferred order and predictability and humans provided neither. They made alliances with species that others considered too primitive or too strange. They shared technology freely instead of using it for political advantage. They treated war as a last resort instead of a useful tool for gaining resources and territory. Fellow council members, Sethkar announced, we must face the possibility that humanity has finally encountered a force they could not adapt to or overcome. Perhaps this silence represents an opportunity for the galaxy to return to more stable and traditional ways of managing interstellar relations. Several species nodded in agreement, but others looked uncomfortable. The smaller civilizations that had benefited from human friendship and protection shifted nervously in their seats. The Kepler natives, who had become council members only after humans had advocated for their rights, looked especially worried. Speaker Valtara listened to various opinions and proposals for several hours. Some suggested immediate military investigation of human space. Others recommended waiting to see if the humans would return on their own. A few proposed dividing human territory among the established powers to prevent chaos. But as the debate continued, a disturbing pattern emerged in the reports from the empty human worlds. The colonies had not been abandoned in panic or destroyed by enemies. Instead, they showed signs of careful, organized evacuation. Personal belongings remained in homes, but anything related to advanced human technology had vanished completely. Most unsettling of all, the artificial intelligence systems that humans had installed throughout their territories were still running. These AI networks responded to basic questions, but refused to provide any information about where the humans had gone or why they had left. Dr. Sophie Barnes, a human scientist who had been working with Etherian researchers in a distant star system when the silence began, managed to send a message to the council. Her report made the mystery even deeper. She had discovered that human AI systems across the galaxy were communicating with each other using quantum entanglement methods that exceeded anything in known galactic databases. The machines were following something called Protocol 7, but no record of such a directive existed in any human files that other species could access. As the council session continued late into the station's artificial night cycle, fear began to replace confusion in the Great Chamber. The humans had not simply disappeared. They had left deliberately, with planning and purpose that no one understood. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, they were doing something that required complete secrecy from the rest of the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, humanity's absence was more frightening than their presence had ever been. The decision to investigate human space came after 3 days of heated debate in the council chambers. Ambassador Zethkar volunteered to lead the mission, though his motives were far from pure. The Vorthic Empire had always wanted access to human territory, especially the rich mining worlds and advanced research facilities that humans had built throughout their space. If humanity was truly gone, someone would need to claim those valuable resources before they fell into the wrong hands. The investigation fleet assembled at the neutral zone between Council space and human territory consisted of 12 ships from different species. Each vessel brought unique technologies and specialists who might help solve the mystery of humanity's disappearance. The Etherians provided their advanced sensors that could detect consciousness and life energy. The Yillian contributed their expert traders who understood human economic patterns. The Kreks sent their best military analysts to look for signs of battle or conquest. Their first destination was New Austin, humanity's newest colony world, and a showcase of their terraforming abilities. The planet had been a barren rock just 15 years ago, but human engineers had transformed it into a garden world with flowing rivers, green forests, and productive farmland. As the investigation ships approached the planet, their sensors confirmed what earlier reports had described. All systems were functioning normally, but no human life signs could be detected anywhere. the orbital defense platforms that protected New Austin were still active and responded to standard identification codes. Automated traffic control systems guided the investigation ships to landing areas with perfect efficiency. The planet's weather control network maintained ideal conditions, and the agricultural systems continued to tend vast fields of crops that would soon need harvesting. Everything worked exactly as it should, except that no humans were there to benefit from their own success. Dr. Sophie Barnes joined the investigation team when they reached New Austin. She had managed to travel from the Etherian Research Station, where she had been working on consciousness transfer experiments. Her knowledge of human behavior and psychology proved invaluable as the team began exploring the empty cities and research facilities. Barnes was a tall woman with short brown hair and intelligent green eyes that seemed to catch details others missed. She had lived among humans for most of her career and understood their thinking patterns better than any other non-human in the galaxy. The colonial capital of New Austin looked like its residents had simply stepped out for a brief walk and planned to return shortly. Homes contained personal belongings, family photographs, and even meals that had been prepared but never eaten. Children's toys lay scattered in playgrounds. Books remained open on tables, as if readers had been interrupted mid-sentence. Yet despite this appearance of sudden departure, the investigation team found clear evidence of organized evacuation in the city's administrative buildings. The colonial archives contained detailed records of resource allocation, transportation, schedules, and population management that painted a picture of careful planning rather than emergency escape. Massive cargo transports had been requisitioned weeks before the silence began. Medical supplies, food reserves, and essential equipment had been systematically relocated according to schedules that showed remarkable coordination across multiple colony worlds. Most disturbing was the complete absence of any advanced human military technology. Personal computers and basic equipment remained in place, but research facilities had been stripped of anything related to weapons development, defense systems, or space travel capabilities. The humans had not simply left their colonies. They had deliberately removed anything that might be useful to other species who came looking for abandoned technology. The artificial intelligence systems presented the greatest puzzle. Human AI networks were known throughout the galaxy for their helpful and cooperative nature. They answered questions readily, provided assistance with technical problems, and shared information freely with anyone who asked. But now, these same systems refused to discuss anything related to human activities or whereabouts. When asked about Protocol 7, they simply responded that they were not authorized to discuss classified directives with non-human personnel. Barnes spent hours trying to communicate with the AI systems using techniques she had learned during her years of working with human researchers. She discovered that the machines were operating under restrictions that seemed to have been implemented gradually over several months. The AIs had been programmed to maintain colony infrastructure and continue research projects, but they were completely forbidden from revealing anything about human strategic plans or current locations. Even more unsettling was the discovery that human AI networks were communicating with each other across interstellar distances using quantum entanglement technology that surpassed anything the Galactic Council possessed. These communications were encrypted with mathematical codes that would take centuries to break using conventional methods. The messages traveled instantly between star systems, creating a galaxy-wide information network that operated independently of normal communication channels. As the investigation expanded to other human colonies, the same patterns emerged everywhere. Careful evacuation, missing military technology, and AI systems bound by mysterious protocols. Each world told the same story of humans who had left by choice rather than force, taking with them anything that might be strategically valuable while leaving behind the infrastructure they had built. The investigation team began to realize that Humanity's disappearance represented something far more complex than retreat or defeat. The evidence suggested a level of planning and coordination that would have required years of preparation. The humans had not simply vanished. They had executed a carefully designed strategy that no one else had detected until it was too late. Barnes made the most disturbing discovery of all when she accessed archived communication logs from the months before the silence began. Hidden within routine diplomatic messages and trade negotiations were subtle patterns that suggested human intelligence. Operations had been monitoring Council activities far more closely than anyone had suspected. References to containment protocols and stability measures appeared in communications between human colonies, using language that implied they knew about threats that had not been publicly acknowledged. The investigation fleet commanders held emergency meetings as reports came in from teams exploring different human worlds. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had discovered something that prompted them to implement a massive evacuation plan while maintaining complete secrecy about their true intentions. Whatever they had learned, it had been serious enough to abandon 43 colony worlds and retreat to unknown locations in space as the investigation entered its second week. Long-range sensors began detecting unusual energy signatures moving through hyperspace toward Council territory. The signatures were unlike anything in galactic databases, suggesting technological capabilities that exceeded current understanding of physics and engineering. Something was coming, and the empty human colonies had been left behind like abandoned chess pieces after the real players had moved to a different game entirely. The breakthrough came when Dr. Sophie Barnes discovered something that changed everything the investigation team thought they knew about the situation. While exploring the abandoned research facilities on New Austin, she found a hidden data storage unit that had been overlooked by whoever had cleared out the human technology. The unit contained encrypted files that required both human biometric identification and specific knowledge of human computer systems to access. Barnes had worked closely enough with human researchers to bypass the security measures, though it took her 3 days of careful work to crack the encryption. What she found inside made her hands shake as she read through the classified documents. The files contained copies of secret Galactic Council communications that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. Messages between high-ranking officials from different species, discussing plans that had never been made public. The documents revealed the existence of something called the Stability Compact, a secret alliance formed between several major council species, the Vorthic Empire, the Krex Dominion, and 3 smaller but influential civilizations had been meeting in private for over 5 years. Their goal was to limit human expansion and influence in galactic affairs through carefully coordinated economic and diplomatic pressure. The Compact members viewed humanity as a threat to the established order that had kept the galaxy stable for thousands of years. Humans formed alliances too easily with species that others considered unimportant. They shared technology without demanding proper payment or political favors. They solved conflicts through negotiation and creativity, instead of following traditional power structures. Most dangerous of all, they inspired other species to question long-established rules and customs. According to the secret files, the Stability Compact had developed a detailed plan to gradually isolate humanity from galactic society. They would restrict access to key trade routes, limit human participation in important negotiations, and create economic dependencies that would force humans to accept a reduced role in council affairs. If peaceful methods failed, the Compact was prepared to use military force to contain human expansion to a small number of worlds. Barnes felt sick as she read through months of communications between Compact members. They discussed humans like a disease that needed to be controlled rather than fellow intelligent beings with rights and freedoms. Ambassador Zeth Kar appeared frequently in the messages, often suggesting more aggressive approaches to the human problem than his allies were comfortable implementing. The most disturbing discovery was that the compact had been behind several recent incidents that humans had attributed to bad luck or natural disasters. A cargo ship explosion that killed 30 human traders had actually been sabotage designed to disrupt human commerce. A failed diplomatic mission between humans and a newly contacted species had been deliberately undermined by compact agents. Even some of the accidents that had claimed human lives in space exploration had been carefully orchestrated attacks. As Barnes prepared to share this information with the investigation team, she heard footsteps behind her in the empty research facility. She turned to find a man in a worn human military uniform standing in the doorway. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and scars on his face that spoke of combat experience. Despite his human appearance, something about him seemed different, as if he had been living in conditions far removed from normal civilization. The man introduced himself as Commander Nick Torres, though Barnes was certain that name appeared in the casualty reports from a training accident 6 months earlier. Torres had supposedly died when his ship exploded during routine exercises near the edge of human space. Yet here he was, very much alive and apparently expecting to find someone in the abandoned research facility. Torres explained that he had been working undercover for human intelligence services, investigating rumors of anti-human activities within the Galactic Council. His supposed death had been carefully staged to allow him to operate without detection while gathering information about threats to human colonies. What he had discovered went far beyond anything the human government had suspected. The stability compact was just the beginning. Torres had found evidence of similar secret alliances throughout galactic history, always formed by established powers to prevent younger civilizations from challenging their dominance. Dozens of species had been contained, controlled, or eliminated over the millennia by coalitions that operated in shadow while maintaining public facades of cooperation and peace. Humanity had discovered the compact's existence through a network of human agents placed throughout Council space over many years. These agents had not been spies in the traditional sense, but rather humans working in legitimate positions who had learned to recognize patterns of behavior that indicated hostile intentions. Teachers, traders, researchers, and diplomats had all contributed pieces of information that eventually revealed the conspiracy. Once human leadership understood the scope of the threat they faced, they had implemented something called the long game. This strategy had been developed by General Amy Watson and her team at the Terran Strategic Planning Division. Instead of confronting the compact directly or appealing to the Galactic Council for protection, humans had chosen a completely different approach. The evacuation of human colonies had been the first phase of the long game, rather than waiting for the compact to implement their containment plans. Humans had voluntarily withdrawn from territories that could be easily attacked or blockaded. But this withdrawal was not a retreat. It was a strategic repositioning that would allow humanity to operate from positions of strength rather than vulnerability. Torres revealed that humans had been secretly exploring regions of space that other species considered too dangerous or worthless to claim. In these remote areas, they had discovered things that would revolutionize their understanding of technology and their place in the galaxy. Ancient ruins, abandoned technologies, and most importantly, contact with species that had been hiding from galactic civilization for their own protection. Many civilizations that the Council had classified as extinct or primitive were actually thriving in hidden locations throughout the galaxy. They had learned to avoid contact with the major powers after experiencing the same treatment that the Stability Compact now planned for humanity. These species had developed technologies based on principles that current galactic science had forgotten or ignored. Working together with these hidden civilizations, humans had spent months developing new capabilities that would allow them to not only survive the compacts attacks, but to fundamentally change the balance of power in galactic affairs. The artificial intelligence networks that maintained the abandoned colonies were just one example of human innovation, accelerated by contact with ancient knowledge. As Torres finished his explanation, the long-range sensors that had been tracking the mysterious energy signatures finally resolved clear readings. A massive fleet was approaching Council space using propulsion methods that exceeded anything in known databases. The ships were clearly of human origin, but they displayed technological capabilities that suggested months of rapid development in complete secrecy. The investigation team realized that humanity's silence had not been about hiding from their enemies. It had been about preparing to return stronger than anyone could have imagined possible. The energy signatures resolved into a sight that would haunt the dreams of every council member for years to come. Admiral Pete Harrison's flagship Terras Dawn emerged from hyperspace, leading a formation of vessels unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The human ships displayed hull designs that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting their shape based on unknown requirements. Their energy signatures suggested they could manipulate gravity, time, and fundamental forces in ways that challenged every known law of physics. But the truly shocking discovery was that the humans were not alone. Accompanying their fleet were ships from dozens of species that galactic records listed as extinct, primitive, or non-existent. The ancient keepers from the galactic core, whose crystalline vessels had not been seen for 3,000 years, flew in perfect formation alongside human destroyers. The nomadic void walkers, dismissed by council surveys as mindless wanderers, operated starships that bent space around themselves in impossible ways. Most disturbing of all were the ships, belonging to civilizations that council databases claimed had never achieved space travel. The forest dwellers of Sylvan Prime, the ocean minds of Aquatica Deep, and the energy beings from the neutron star systems all displayed advanced technology that made their supposed primitiveness seem like a carefully maintained deception. Admiral Harrison was a veteran commander whose reputation for tactical brilliance was known throughout human space. He was a short, stocky man with gray hair and calm blue eyes that had seen too many battles. His presence at the head of this mysterious fleet sent a clear message that humanity's return was not a desperate gamble, but a carefully planned military operation. The Admiral's first communication to the Galactic Council station was broadcast on all frequencies so that every species in the galaxy could receive it simultaneously. Standing beside him on the bridge of Terra's Dawn was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, humanity's former chief diplomat who had supposedly retired from public service 2 years earlier. Mitchell was an elegant woman with silver hair and a kind of diplomatic smile that had once charmed enemies into becoming allies. Mitchell's message was delivered in the calm, professional tone that had made her famous throughout galactic society, but her words carried implications that terrified every council member who heard them. She explained that humanity had spent the past year not hiding from their problems, but solving them in ways that no one had anticipated. The discovery of the Stability Compact had prompted humans to look deeper into galactic history, and what they had found changed everything. Deep space archaeological expeditions had uncovered evidence of ancient civilizations that had faced the same kind of systematic oppression that the Compact planned to use against humanity. These older species had developed technologies based on principles that current galactic science had either forgotten or deliberately suppressed. More importantly, they had survived by retreating to hidden locations throughout the galaxy where they continued to evolve and advance without interference from the dominant powers. The species that council records classified as extinct had actually been driven to the galaxy's edges by the same forces that now sought to contain humanity. The Vorthak Empire's ancestors had destroyed entire civilizations, whose only crime was developing too quickly or asking too many questions. The Krex Dominion had built their current territories on the ruins of peaceful species who had refused to submit to their military authority. Working together in secret bases scattered across uncharted regions, humans and their new allies had developed technologies that combined human innovation with ancient wisdom. The shape-shifting hulls of the human ships used principles learned from the Voidwalkers, who had mastered the art of adapting to hostile environments. The gravity manipulation systems came from the ancient keepers, whose understanding of fundamental forces exceeded anything in current scientific knowledge. Mitchell revealed that the artificial intelligence networks maintaining the abandoned human colonies had been doing far more than simple maintenance work. They had been conducting massive research projects, analyzing data from dozens of civilizations, and developing new technologies at a pace that would have been impossible with organic researchers alone. The AIs had been following Protocol 7, which was actually a directive to prepare for humanity's return with capabilities that would ensure their survival against any possible threat. To demonstrate the seriousness of their position, the human fleet simultaneously targeted the orbital defense platforms around 12 major Council worlds. These platforms represented the primary military protection for the galaxy's most important civilizations, including the Vorthic homeworld and the Krex command centers. Using some form of quantum virus technology that spread through networks faster than light itself, the human ships completely shut down these defensive systems without firing a single weapon. The demonstration lasted exactly 60 seconds before the platforms were restored to full operation. But the message was unmistakable. Humanity now possessed the ability to neutralize any military force in the galaxy whenever they chose to do so. A fact that they had chosen to demonstrate restraint rather than destruction spoke to their intentions, but also highlighted the helplessness of their former enemies. Ambassador Zethkar's reaction to this display was immediate and predictable. From his position in the council chambers, he demanded that all member species unite against what he called humanity's unprovoked aggression against galactic stability. He argued that the humans had clearly been corrupted by contact with dangerous alien influences and now posed a threat to every civilized world in the galaxy. But Zethkar's calls for war fell on increasingly deaf ears as more details of the stability compact became public knowledge. Commander Nick Torres had shared Dr. Barnes' discoveries with news networks throughout Council space, and the evidence of the conspiracy was impossible to deny. Species that had supported the compact found themselves facing angry populations who demanded explanations for secret plans that had never been approved by democratic processes. The situation grew more complex when several smaller civilizations announced their support for humanity's demands. The mining colonies of the asteroid belts, the research stations orbiting dangerous stars, and the frontier settlements on the galaxy's rim had all benefited from human friendship and protection. They remembered how humans had shared technology freely, defended weak colonies from raiders, and treated every species as equals, regardless of their military power or economic influence. As reports of the human fleet's capabilities spread throughout the galaxy, fear began to replace anger in the council chambers. This was not the humanity that had once begged for acceptance into galactic society. These were beings who had transcended their previous limitations and returned with the power to reshape civilization according to their own vision of how the galaxy should operate. The Galactic Council faced the most difficult decision in its 3,000-year history as the human fleet maintained position just outside the neutral zone. Ambassador Zethkar and the remaining Stability Compact members desperately tried to rally support for military resistance, but their arguments crumbled under the weight of public opinion and revealed evidence. The classified communications that Dr. Barnes had discovered were now being broadcast on every news network in the galaxy, showing the true nature of the conspiracy against humanity. Zethkar's attempts to frame humanity's actions as aggression fell apart when more details emerged about the Compact's planned attacks on human colonies. The evidence showed that several recent accidents involving human casualties had actually been deliberate sabotage operations designed to weaken human influence in galactic affairs. A cargo ship explosion that killed 30 human traders, the failed diplomatic missions, and even some exploration disasters had all been carefully orchestrated by Compact agents. The revelation split the young Galactic Council into 3 distinct factions. Progressive species like the Etherians and several smaller civilizations supported humanity's call for democratic reforms and equal representation for all sentient beings. Traditional powers that had benefited from the old system resisted any changes that would reduce their influence. A large middle group remained undecided, wanting to avoid conflict but uncertain about accepting humanity's demands. The situation balanced on the edge of galactic civil war until an unexpected voice spoke from the council chambers. Elder Marcus Stone emerged from what everyone had believed was quiet retirement on a peaceful research station. The old diplomat was thought to be humanity's oldest living representative, a man whose career had spanned 4 decades of galactic service. His white hair and deeply lined face showed the weight of years spent negotiating between hostile species and preventing conflicts that could have destroyed entire civilizations. But Stone's appearance at the council revealed that his retirement had been another carefully maintained deception. For the past 2 years, he had been serving as humanity's secret ambassador to the galaxy's most ancient and powerful species. These elder races were being so old and advanced that even the current council barely acknowledged their existence. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger civilizations, preferring to observe from distant locations and intervene only when absolutely necessary. Stone's revelation that these ancient beings supported humanity's reforms sent shock waves through the assembled delegates. The elder races possessed technologies that made even humanity's new capabilities seem primitive by comparison. Their approval was not based on military considerations, but on philosophical principles that went back to the earliest days of galactic civilization. The ancient species had been watching recent developments with growing concern about institutional corruption and systematic oppression within the current council structure. They remembered the original accords that had been signed when the galaxy was young, agreements that guaranteed all sentient species the right to develop and grow without artificial constraints imposed by established powers. The elder races announced that the Stability Compact's activities violated these fundamental agreements in ways that could not be ignored. Their intervention was not military, but moral, reminding the galaxy of principles that had been forgotten during millennia of political maneuvering and power struggles. They declared that any attempt to prevent the peaceful reform of galactic institutions would be met with their direct opposition. Faced with resistance from both humanity's new alliance and the galaxy's most ancient powers, the Stability Compact began to collapse from within. Species that had joined the conspiracy out of fear or political pressure started to distance themselves from its goals. The evidence of planned attacks on human civilians made continued support politically impossible for democratically governed civilizations. Ambassador Zethkar made one final, desperate attempt to prevent the changes that would end his empire's dominance. He secretly ordered Vorthic military forces to launch a surprise attack on Earth's solar system, believing that destroying humanity's homeworld would break their alliance and restore the old order. The attack fleet consisted of the most advanced warships in the Vorthic arsenal, equipped with weapons capable of cracking planets and sterilizing entire star systems. But humanity had anticipated this possibility from the moment they discovered the Stability Compact's existence. Earth was protected by defensive technologies that made Admiral Harrison's fleet demonstrations seem simple by comparison. The human homeworld existed within layers of spatial distortion that made it effectively unreachable by conventional weapons. Any hostile force that approached the solar system found itself redirected through carefully controlled wormholes to predetermined locations, where automated defense systems could disable their ships without causing casualties. The Vorthak attack. Fleet discovered this protection when their weapons fire was absorbed by energy barriers that converted destructive force into harmless light displays. Their ships were then gently transported to holding areas near Jupiter, where human rescue teams provided food, medical care, and comfortable accommodations while diplomatic solutions were negotiated. More significantly, the automated systems throughout former human space revealed their true purpose when the attack began. Every abandoned colony that the investigation teams had explored had been equipped with advanced monitoring technology designed to gather intelligence on any hostile forces. The seemingly empty worlds had been watching and recording everything that happened within their boundaries, providing humanity with detailed information about the military capabilities and intentions of potential enemies. The failed attack marked the end of organized resistance to humanity's reforms. Speaker Veltara called for emergency votes on the proposals that Dr. Mitchell had presented, and the results showed how completely the balance of power had shifted. The old Galactic Council structure was dissolved and replaced with a new democratic assembly where species were represented based on their population and diversity rather than their military or economic influence. Captain Jake Morrison returned from the secret mission that had kept him away during the crisis, revealing that he had been establishing humanity's new capital on a world at the galaxy's edge. This location was designed to serve as a meeting place for all species seeking alternatives to traditional galactic politics. The facility could accommodate beings with radically different environmental needs and provided neutral ground where conflicts could be resolved through negotiation rather than force. Dr. Sophie Barnes became the first director of the new Galactic Archaeological Institute, dedicated to rediscovering lost knowledge and forgotten civilizations throughout the galaxy. Her work ensured that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated and that the galaxy would never again lose touch with its diverse heritage. The final scene showed Admiral Rex Coleman meeting with representatives from over 200 species. At the new capital, many were making contact with galactic civilization for the first time, having spent centuries hiding from the oppressive policies of the old council. The galaxy that had once feared humanity's unpredictable nature now embraced it as the catalyst for a new age of exploration, cooperation, and growth that would benefit every form of intelligent life among the stars.